We begin today the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Zayin Amid Beis, continuing the halachis of Asher Shanogach. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Shor Shal Yisrael, a shor that belongs to a Yid, or the Bachsker says a shor that belongs to a head Yid, to any plain Yid, Shanogach Shor Shal Hektish, that gore the shor that belongs to Hektish, or Vishal Hektish, the shor that belongs to a Hektish, Shanogach the shor Shal Head Yid, that gores the shor of a head Yid. Potter. In both cases, you're potter. This Mishnah actually is based on a Mishnah that there was towards the end of the first Perek, and here this Mishnah says more details about the halacha. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Shor re'ehu v'lo shor shel hektish. The pasuk where it speaks about the damage that you pay for a shor tam, so it says v'chiyigoif shor ish a shor re'ehu. So it says shor re'ehu. So that excludes a case of hektish, whether you damaged hektish or hektish damaged you. Either way, you'll be potter. A shor shel Yisrael shenagach a shor shel Kanani. A shor of a Yid that gores the shor of a goy, of a Kanani. Potter. So the Yid is potter. On the other hand, v'shel Kanani shenagach a shor shel Yisrael. The shor of a Kanani that gores the shor of a Yid. Bein tam, bein muid. Whether it's the first 3 times a tam or afterwards, mishalem nezek shalom. You always pay nezek shalom. Sagt the Gemara Masnisin, the Loi Rab Shimon ben Menasya. The Mishnah that says that when you gore hektish, a shor of hektish, so you'll be potter, it's not like the opinion of Rab Shimon ben Menasya. And we had this already, actually earlier in the Masechta. The Tanya and Abraisa, we learned as follows: Shor shel hektish shenagach shor shel hektish, or the reverse: V'shel hektish shenagach shel hektish shor shel hektish. So like it said in the Mishnah, the Bava Kama here says the same thing: potter. Either way, you'll be potter. Shenema shor re'ehu v'loi shel hektish. Rav Shimon ben Menasya says, Shor shel hektish shenagach shor shel hedyet. If it's an ox of hektish that gores an ox of a hedyet, then potter. But v'shel hedyet shenagach shor shel hektish. But if a shor of a hedyet gores to hektish, then bein tam, bein muid, either way, mishalem nezek shalom. You have to pay full pay. So actually you're more machmer when it gored hektish. That's Rav Shimon ben Menasya's opinion. So the Gemara will explain how does Rav Shimon ben Menasya understand the pasuk v'chiyigoif shor ish as shor re'ehu. Does he dash in this pasuk? Does he not dash in the pasuk? How does he understand it? Says the Gemara, "My kasav Rav Shimon. What's Rav Shimon's opinion? I re'ehu dafke. If he learns out that's like the Bava Kama dash in shor re'ehu, that the pasuk is saying only if your shor gores a shor of your friend, of a fellow. So then afilu shel hedyet shenagach shel hektish lipater." Just like you're saying that if hektish gores a hedyet, you potter, so the same thing should be in the reverse. It's either way, it's not re'ehu. So a hedyet that gores a hektish should also be potter. V'i re'ehu lav dafke, and if he does not darshan the word re'ehu, so then afila the hektish nami. So when by hektish as well, ki nogach the hedyet, if a shor of hektish gores a shor of hedyet, l'chayiv should also be chayiv, because there's no exception here. We don't darshan the word re'ehu at all. If you'll argue and say as follows: really, Rav Shimon ben Menasya does hold of the drasha of re'ehu, and therefore really you should be potter. Mio the hedyet kinogach the hektish, but if a shor of the hedyet gores a shor of hektish, so hainu time of the mechayev. The reason why you chayev, even though you have the miut of re'ehu, mishum the kamaisila mekavachaymer the hedyet, because we learned this with a kavachaymer from the chiyov when a shor of a hedyet gores a shor of another hedyet. Man hedyet shenagach shel hedyet. If a shor of a hedyet gores another shor of a hedyet, chayev. So for that you chayev. So kinagach the hektish. If a shor of a hedyet gores hektish, and with hektish you should be more careful, and it's more chumradik, like all sheken and mechayev. Definitely you should also be chayev. So therefore, Rav Shimon ben Menasya says that you chayev by the hektish goring hedyet you potter, because he is memayit from re'ehu. But on the other hand, there's a kavachayim to say that when hedyet gores hektish, you'll be chayev. Says the Gemara, but if that's the source of Rav Shimon ben Menasya, dayay lebamen adin liya is kinidin. If so, you could only learn from the kavachayim as much as the source itself has, whatever the chiyuv is from where you're learning out from. And where are you learning it out from? You're learning it out from the chiyuv of a hedyet that gores a hedyet. So mala alone, just like over there, tam chatzi nezek. When it's a tam, you only pay half. So over here the halacha should be the same, that you should only pay half. So why does Rav Shimon ben Menasya say that when a shor shel hedyet gores a shor shel hektish, you always pay nezek shalim. What's the source for that? It can't be this kal v'chaymer. So therefore, the Gemara says that the pshat and Hashem b'menasya is different. Zok the Gemara say, Ela omer Rish Lakish. So Rish Lakish explains as follows: Hakoil hoyu b'chlal nezek shalim. Everyone was included in the halacha in the Torah that if you're share gores and damages, you have to pay nezek shalim. What the Gemara means by this is whether it's a share of a hekdesh, whether it's a share of a hedyet. Either way, in the parsha in the Torah where it says the halacha of mued, so over there it says that you pay nezek shalim. It doesn't make over there any distinction between hekdesh and hedyet. Now, keshaparat lecha akasav reyeyu. Then when the Torah comes and specifies with the word re'eyu to say that we're going to exclude the shayr of hekdesh, where did the Torah do this? Gabei tam. The Torah said this miyut only by tam. But over there it says re'eyu hu the tam mishalem chatzin nezek. So there the Torah is saying that if a shayr of a hedyet gores a shayr of a hedyet, so then you pay chatzin nezek. And the klal, from this I learn out the hekdesh, that when it comes to hekdesh, bein tam, Bei muad, whether you gore as a tam, whether you gore as a muad, mishalim, nezek shalim. Either way, you have to pay nezek shalim. So what the Gemara is saying over here is, where did the Torah write the miyut of the word re'eyu to say that the payment when you gore hekdesh is different than the payment when you gore another hedyet? The Torah didn't write the miyut by a muad. If the Torah would want to come and say that you're totally potter when you gore hekdesh, it should write the word re'eyu by hekdesh. Sorry, not by hekdesh. I meant to say by muad. It should write it by muad. Over there where it's saying that you pay nezek shalim, there the Torah should write only for re'eyu. For hekdesh you don't pay nezek shalim. As the Gemara continues right now, the imkain, if the point of the Torah is to say that you shouldn't pay at all, nichtav kra lahai re'eyu gabi muad. The Torah should write the miyud of re'eyu by muad, where it says the payment of nezek shalim. And there the Torah should say that that's only for re'eyu. So that excludes if you gore hekdesh and you totally potter. By mued, where the Torah says the payment, the Torah doesn't say any miyut of re'eyu. So therefore, what do you understand from that? The Torah that writes the miyut of re'eyu only by tam, what it's saying is the din of tam, that you pay chatzi nezek, that is what we're excluding it from. But the din that you pay nezek shalem, that remains. So therefore, a shayr of a hedyet that gores a shayr of a hekdesh, the din of tam is excluded, and you always pay nezek shalim. That's what you learn out when a shayr of a hedyet gores a shayr of a hekdesh. One second. Rashi now explains the other half. The Gemara does not explain this, but what's with the other way around? What's with a shayr of hekdesh that gores a shayr of hedyet? Why over there is the halacha that you totally potter? Rashi doesn't explain. Sorry, the Gemara that is doesn't explain that. So Rashi in the first pshat over here, Rashi says that you learn from the pasuk because by the din of din of mued, the Torah says v'huad bevalav, that the owner, the bailam, has to be warned for this. Rashi is further up. It says v'huad bevalav. By hekdesh, there's no owner that's going to be warned about this. Another thing Rashi says that by tam, it says v'chiyigoyv shayr ish. So it says shayr ish. It has to be a shayr that belongs to an individual. So therefore, the fact that by hekdesh, a shayr of hekdesh, if it gores a shayr of hedyet, you totally potter for that, is because whether it's a muad, whether it's a tam, you see clearly in the Torah that it's only possible to be chayiv if this shayr belongs to someone individual. So therefore, you're going to be potter. But again, the other way around, if it's a shayr of a hedyet that gores a shayr of a hekdesh, over there it's going to be l'chumre. Not only you're not going to be potter, you're actually going to be chayiv nezek shalim the first time. Why? Because the exclusion of re'eyu that the Torah wrote, it says it in the parasha of tam, meaning that the kula of tam doesn't apply when you gore hekdesh. Adarabah, you always chayiv nezek shalim when the shayr of a hedyet gores the shayr of a hekdesh. That's the pshat in Rav Shimon ben Menashe's opinion. The pasuk what? Yeah, the pasuk of re'eyu says specifically by tam. You have it on the side of the Gemara. V'chiyuv shayr ish is shayr re'eyu, and then it says in the end of that pasuk, v'chotzes kaspa v'gamas hamesyach. It's talking about tam. Yeah, so that's the diak of Rav Shimon ben Menashe, that it says the drasha specifically to exclude it from the din of tam. Okay, so on Daf Lamed Ches, going to the next din of the Mishnah, it said shayr shel Yisrael shenagach shayr shel Kanani potter. Shayr of a yid that gores the shayr of a guy you potter. Then the Mishnah said the other way around, the shayr of a guy that gores the shayr of a yid will be chayiv always nezek shalim. So the Gemara asks, Omri, the yeshiva students asked the question here similar to the question we asked before. Mimanav shach, either way you look at it, it's not understood. If we're going to darshan here as well the word re'eyu, and therefore we exclude a guy. So if so, the Kanani, Kinogach the Yisrael, a share of a guy that gores the share of a yid, namili potter, should also be potter because it's not re'eyu. If we're not darshaning the word re'eyu, then I feel the Yisrael Kinogach the Kanani nechayev. So a share of a yid that gores the share of a Kanani should also be chayev because we're not darshaning re'eyu. Omar Rabavo, that is. Rabavo says that really we darshan re'ehu, and therefore the share of a yid that gores the share of a guy is potter. So why if the share of a guy gores the share of a yid yichayev? So he says as follows. Omar Kra, there's a pasuk that says, Omad vayemayde doretz, the Eibishter got up to judge the world. Ra vayater goyim. And he saw and vayater goyim. What does this mean, vayater goyim? And what it means is Ra sheva mitzvah shekibla alein b'nei noyach. The sheva mitzvahs b'nei noyach that the goyim accepted upon themselves. Kivin shaloi kimu. The Eibishter saw when he was judging them that they did not fulfill it. Omad v'hiter m'mayna liYisrael. So the Eibishter got up, and vayater goyim means the Eibishter allowed their money, that Yidden should take their money from them. What does this mean? So this doesn't mean literally that Yidden, Tosfos here points out, it doesn't mean literally that Yidden could go and take money from a guy in any circumstance whenever he wants. What it means is here, this case, when a guy's shayr gores a shayr of Yidden damages, so even though there would be a din of a tam, chatzi nezek, but the Eibishter was mater, meaning the Eibishter said no, that's a knas for this that they did not fulfill the sheva mitzvahs b'nei noyach, and they have to pay full payment even when the damage is the first time. That's what Rabavo darshaned. Rav Yechanan said there's another pasuk where it says this knas for the goyim mehacha. We learned from here. It says Haifia mehar Paran. The Eibishter appeared in Har Paran, which is by Har Sinai. Mi Paran, from Paran, where the Eibishter offered the Torah to the goyim and they refused to accept the Torah. Haifia memaynam liYisrael. So the Torah, so that because they refused to take the Torah, that is, so the Eibishter gives the money of the goyim to the Yidden. And again, that's been negated to this case, that you can collect nezek shalim when the share of a guy gores the share of a yid. Yeah, even by a tam. Tanya nami hachi. This is exactly what it says in the Braise. Share Yisrael shenagach share Kanani potter. A share of a yid that gores the share of a Kanani, so for that you potter. Share Kanani shenagach share Yisrael. Then ben tam ben mued mishal nezek shalim. The guy has to pay full pay from the beginning. And it brings these two psukim. Shenemar, Omad vayemayde doretz. The Eibishter is judging the world. Ra vayate goyim. And the Eibishter saw they're not doing sheva mitzvahs b'nei noyach, so the Eibishter is matter to take their money. And v'aymer, the other pasuk says, Haifia mehar Paran, that because the Eibishter came and offered them the Torah in Har Paran, they didn't accept it, so the Eibishter gave the money to the Yidden. So now here in this Braise, it actually brings both psukim. It says the Gemara Mai v'aymer. Why is the Braise bringing both psukim? Because if you'll say, Hi Omad vayemayde doretz, the first pasuk it quotes can't be a source to say that you can collect this money from the goyim. Because mi bayale, from that pasuk you darshan something else. Look at Rav Masne, look at Rav Yosef. There's two drashes the Gemara will bring in a moment, like Rav Masne and like Rav Yosef. So therefore Tashema, the Braise comes and says, come, I'll bring you a second pasuk, which is Haifia mehar Paran, mi Paran, Haifia memaynam liYisrael. That's because they didn't accept the Torah, so they didn't get their money. Says the Gemara, Mai de Rav Masna. What's the drasha that Rav Masna darshaned of this pasuk that we said that it's used for his drasha? Rav Masna said, Omad vayemayde eretz ra v'chulu, that the Eibishter came to judge the goyim and he saw Mara. What did the Eibishter see? Ra sheva mitzvahs shenitztav alein b'nei noyach. The Eibishter saw that the 7 mitzvahs of the b'nei noyach that they were commanded v'loi kimum. He didn't fulfill them. So what does it mean vayater? Vayater doesn't mean that the Eibishter allowed to collect the money from them. What it means is Omad v'higloisa me'alad masam. The Eibishter made the goyim exile from their lands, from their countries. And Rashi here brings over here different examples where we find that goyim were exiled from their lands. My mashma the hay vayater lishna dagluyehu. Where do we see that this word vayater means that the goyim were exiled? Because ksiv vacha vayater goyim. Or ksiv hasam, there's another pasuk where it says a similar term, lenater behen ala aretz. And what does the word lenater mean? Umetargim lekaftza b'hoyin alara, that they jump on the land. So you see that the word vayater means that Eibishter made the goyim jump, move away from their territory where they were. That was Rav Masna's drasha in this pasuk. Mai did Rav Yosef. What did Rav Yosef darshan? He darshan different. Rav Yosef, Amar vayemayde eretz ra v'chulu. So again, the pshat here is ma ra. What did the Eibishter see? Ra sheva mitzvahs shekibla alein b'nei noyach v'lei kimu. That there's 7 mitzvahs, they did not fulfill them. Amad v'hitiron lehem. Vayater means that the Eibishter got up and was matter to them. So simply that would mean that the Eibishter said, okay, so you don't have to do the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Fragt the Gemara, how could that be? Is Gure Yizger because they didn't fulfill it, so therefore they gain by this, and the Eibishter just remove the mitzvahs from them? So we find that a sinner gains. So Mar Bereder Ravana explained what the drasha means. Loimar, what it means to say is not that they're potter from doing these mitzvahs, but it says even if they do fulfill them, the Eibishter took away their schar. Fragt the Gemara, how could you say they get no schar? They don't get any schar. Vatanya, but we learned in a Braise, Rab Meir said, Binayin shafilu nochri v'isig b'teire. How do we know that a guy that learns Torah should be Kohen Gadol? That he's as great as a Kohen Gadol. Now, what kind of Torah is it we're talking about? A guy is B'chlal, not allowed to learn Torah. But over here, talking about the Rishonim say a guy that learns Torah of the halachas of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. That a guy is supposed to learn. So if he's learning these halachas of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he's as great as a Kohen Gadol. Talmud Leimar, Asher Yasa Isam Adam V'chai Behem, a person that does what it says in the Torah, he learns and fulfills what it says in the Torah. So it says Ha'adam. Who's Ha'adam? Kainim, Levim, Yisraelim, Loinama doesn't use a term that it would be limited to a Kain or Levi or even Yisrael. Ela Adam. It says the term Adam. Hala Madatasa, from here we learn Shafila Nachri, Vaisik B'Teire. A guy learns Teire, meaning he's learning his halachas of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Hareu Kayin Gadol. He's as great as a Kayin Gadol. Right, so over here you see that by a goyim, when they learn Torah from their halachas, if you could become as great as a Kohen Gadol, it can't be that when they learn and fulfill their Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach that they get no schar for this. Here we see that they become as great as a Kohen Gadol. There's a Taisvis here about this term Adam. It's a famous Taisvis because Taisvis brings some other places in the Gemara where the Gemara says Ha-Adam. See, Taisus Ela Ha'adam, that in other places in Shas it says that the term Adam goes in Yidden. It's quoted many times in Chassidus. Adam Atam Kriyim Adam. Only Yidden are called Adam. Yidden are Adam Alelian. Here the Gemara is saying that the term Adam even goes on Goyim. So Taisus answers that when it says Adam, it goes on only on Yidden. When it says Ha'adam, and that's what it says here in the Pasuk, Ashiyasayim Ha'adam, that goes even on Goyim. That's Taisus' answer. Another interesting thing over here, you see over here that a guy that learns Torah, so his Torah is as great as a Kohen Gadol. Okay, the Gemara in another place says as great as a Kohen Gadol that goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, meaning that what you see here is a guy doesn't have a mitzvah of learning Torah. He has a mitzvah to do the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. In order to be able to fulfill the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he has to learn Torah. So you see how chashuv learning Torah is, that even if you don't even have the mitzvah of learning Torah, your mitzvah is just to do the Sheva Mitzvahs, but if you learn those halachas, you become as great as a Kohen Gadol. So even, for example, a woman or someone that's not mitzvah to learn mitzvahs, the cheftza of the Torah itself is extremely powerful, and therefore he becomes as great as a Kohen Gadol. The Rebbe brings this in, the Rebbe talks about this in a Sikh in Chelik Yudalet, Parshas Ekev. You see here the chshivas of Torah. So the Gemara answers, Omri, so they answer as follows. Even though it's true, we see here how great a guy is when he learns and fulfills the halachas of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, but nevertheless, after the guy were not careful with fulfilling the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the Eibishter took away from them the level of schar that they would get, like someone that gets schar when you command it and you fulfill. They get schar like someone that gets schar for doing something that is not commanded and he does it, which is less schar. When you're commanded and you fulfill the mitzvah, that you get much more schar than someone that's not, because there's a bigger yetzer hara, or because you have more of a pressure to fulfill. When you have a tzivui, Taisus and Kedushim, we learned it says this. So they get less schar because they weren't careful with the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach.
Does the bucket from the Gemara Tzuvah?
Yeah, this is one of the places. Yeah, it's brought here and it's brought in Gemara and Kedushin. Yeah. So the Gemara Tani Rabbanon. We learned in the Braise about this halacha we brought before about the shayr of a guy that gores the shayr of a yid that'll be chayiv always nezek shalem. Ukvar sholcha malchus roimi. The government of Rome sent Shnei Sradiotis. It's a Chachmei Yisrael. They sent 2 officers to the Yidden, to the Chachamim. And they said, Lamdunu Torah Seichem. Teach us Torah. Karo, V'shano, V'shileshu. They taught them once, twice, 3 times. They taught them all the halachas of the Torah very well. Taisus actually says they're not allowed to learn Torah. You're not allowed to teach a guy Torah if he comes to ask you to teach him Torah. But over here they had no choice. The government forced them to teach these 2 officers Torah. Another pshat Taisus says is that they came and they faked the fact that they wanted to be Gaidim in order to be able to learn the Yidden's Torah. So they didn't realize that they're teaching Torah to Goyim. So then what happened? B'shas pitirasa. when they were about to depart from the Chachamim, they're returning back to Rome. Amru lahem, so they said to the Yidden, Diktaknu b'chol teiraschem. We were very, very medayik and everything in Torah, and everything in the Torah, we see that it's true. Besides this halach here that you say, Shershe Yisrael shenagach Shershe Kanani potter. A share of you that goes a share of Kanani, you'll be totally potter. Shal Kanani shenagach Shershe Yisrael bein tam bein muad mishal nezek shalom. Other way around, you have to pay nezek shalom. This halacha they said we can't understand. And they were asking mitzad they weren't asking because they were offended. They were asking, what's the drash here? The question that the Gemara asked before. If you darshan the re'eyu, so then a share of a Kanani that goes a share of Yisrael should also be potter. If you don't darshan the re'eyu, then a fellow the Yisrael Kanani l'chayiv, so then you should either way be chayiv. And then the Gemara says, in the way most learned the pshat here, that these officers themselves, when they left, they said, this detail of Torah that we learned by you, we're not going to let the government know about this. In other words, they were actually doing a favor. If they would say this to the government, well, they would tell them the real reason that the Gemara said before, that the Torah canceled the Goyim, that it allowed us to take the money from the Goyim to collect, then it would be a big Zayda on Yidden. And they did a favor, they said, we're not going to let the government know about this. Shmuel by Yehuda, Gemara brings another story, and the connection the Mefarshim say is, we spoke before about the inyan of schar, regarding the Goyim doing Shav Mitzvah Neich, and the continuation of this inyan, it'll talk also about the inyan of schar. So Shmuel by Yehuda, Shchivele Brate, his daughter passed away. Amr le Rabbanon lo Ule, so the Rabbanon there, this is in Bavel, and the Rabbanon told Ule, Kum, Nezel, Nenachme, let's go together and console, be Menachem Aval, Shmuel by Yehuda. So Ula said to these Chachamim from Bavel, "My isli gabenacham to the Bavloi. Why should I come together with you and I would console Rav Shmuel by Yehuda together with you Babylonians the way you will console him?" Okay, in other words, Ula wasn't himself really from Bavel. Ula came from Eretz Yisrael. He wasn't a Bavli. He didn't want to go and join them to console. Why? Because the Amri, when the Bavliim would console someone, what would they say? They would say, "Ma yav shalom eved." What could we do? No, this is what happened. No, what could we do? That's how they would console. So why didn't Ula like this? Because Ula said, it sounds like what you're saying is you're not really accepting the Eivish's judgment of what happened when someone died. Because what he's basically saying is, if we were able to do something, we would do something. So it's sort of a sign that you're not really accepting what the Eivish did. So therefore Ula does not want to join them to console in this way. So Ula went by himself to console Rav Shmuel by Yehuda, and here the Gemara says what he told them. Very interesting how Ula consoled in a completely different way. So Omar Lei, he told Rav Shmuel by Yehuda about his daughter that passed away as follows. It says in the pasuk, "Vayayma Hashem," the Eivisher says to Moshe, "Al totzer es Moav, al tiska bo Muhammad." Don't bother Moav, don't start a war with them. So the question is, "V'chima ola al daita shel Moshe lasas Muhammad shaloi b'rishus." Did Moshe Rabbeinu think that he's going to start a war with Moav without asking Hashem? Why is that Eivisher preempting and telling Moshe Rabbeinu, don't start a war with Moav? Ella, the answer is, Moshe Rabbeinu thought that he has to fight with them, because Nasa Moshe kavachayme ba'atzmai. Moshe Rabbeinu made the following kavachayme. Omar, he said, Uma midyanim shalei bo el Lazarus Moav. The midyanim, they only came to assist Moav to come to fight with Yidden. Right? Who was Balak? Melech Moav was the one that caused the problems for the Yidden. He sent to Midyan to get advice. What do we do with the Yidden? And then he brought Bilam from Midyan. But Balak, Melech Moav, he was the main one that was the problem. So even though Midyan only helped out, Amra Teire, then what does the Teire say? That you should bring suffering and you should hit the Midyanim. So for sure, definitely, Moavim Atzmam, the Moavim themselves, they were the ones that started the whole problem. Like Kol Shekin, definitely you have to fight with the Moavim. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu thought. So he doesn't have to be commanded from the Eibishter. Amaloi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter answered, Loi, no, Loi Kishal Sal Daitach, Al Sal Daiti. Not like what you're thinking, that you should go and fight with Moav is my plan. Why not? Why should you fight with Moav? And actually not only Moav, but Ammon and Moav. I have two birds, which means there are two women that are going to be Megayah that are coming out from these nations. Rus HaMoaviyah, Rus that comes from Moav, and Nama HaAmmonis, Nama that comes from Ammon. And therefore, we can't touch this nation because these two women that are going to be Megayah can come out from them. So now, what did the Ula say when he was being Menachem Mavel? He said, "V'aloi dvarim kavachomer." This is a kavachomer here. Uma b'shvul shtei preidis tevis. If for these two women that came out, Chos HaKadosh Baruch Hu Beizum is Gedai Lois V'lo Yachrivan. The Eibush has mercy on these two nations and doesn't destroy them. Bita Shel Rebbe, the daughter of the Rebbe here, of Rab Shmuel Bar Yehuda, in Ksheri V'irui Alatzis Mimena, David Toiv, if she was kosher and she would have had any descendants that would have came out of her, there would have been a David Toiv, Allah has Kama V'Kama Davachaya. For sure the Eibush would have saved their life. So this is a very interesting way of consoling. But the point that he's trying to basically say is that if your daughter passed away, then you should accept Eibish's Gzar Din, and you should know that there's nothing that she did to her, what she had to do in this world. She was mamala, her tafkid in the world, and therefore there's nothing to be upset. You have to accept what the Eibush gave you. This is actually brought in Shulchan Aruch, in the Ramah, in Yeridea, that there's a machlekes there regarding this. These basically, Gemara here is saying there's two different ways that you could be menachem movel. One is by basically telling the person to be mekabel es adin completely, like Ola, and the other is like the Bavliim, that they would say, "No, what could we do to sort of be mishtatif in the Tsar?" And in such a way, you're not necessarily telling him that you're accepting the Eibish's din. And the Ramah there says that you're not supposed to be menachem movel that way. You're only supposed to be menachem movel in this way. That's what it says. Okay.
Also, I feel it this way. Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing can come out like it's okay.
Yeah. It's a shver as it's a red now, but we're talking about great tzaddikim. I guess for him to be able to mekabel es adin in such a way. Like I mentioned, the Mefarshim say the point here is he's trying to basically say that your daughter that passed away, she came into this world and she did what she had to. She got done what she had to in this world. Okay, so the Gemara continues now from this when they get to Moav, Ammon, and Moav. Omer Rab Chia bar Abba, Omer Rab Yechanan. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekapech schar kol beria. The Eibush does not skip giving over the schar for any creature in the world that does something good. Even the schar of talking more modestly, more nicely, you get schar for that. Where did we find this? We find this regarding the two daughters of Lot. They both had a relation with the father and gave birth, but there's a difference between them. The when it comes to the older daughter, the Ka'amra Moav, she named her daughter Moav, which is not so tzniizdik. It's Moav means Me'av, that the child was born from the father. So like Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, the Eibush, when he says to Moshe not to fight with Moav, what does it say? Al totzes Moav. That you shouldn't make a mulchama with them, meaning a full-out war. That not mulchama udulay ha angaria avedbo. But if you want to subjugate them, that they should be under you. That yes. So only a mulchama because she used words not so pure. Tzira, then the younger daughter, the Ka'amra ben Ami, she named her daughter Amain ben Ami, meaning that this child was born from my family, but it was more clean. Not so more modest. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe v'kerafta mul b'nei Ammon al titzuram al tiskabam klal. Dafula angari le'tavbo. Here it doesn't say mulchama. Here you can't cause them any pain at all. I mean, that's because the sichana that she spoke more nice than her sister. But then on the other hand, the Gemara says, "V'amar Rab Chia bar Abba, V'amar Rab Yeshua ben Karcha, la'olam yakdam adam l'dvar mitzvah." A person should always go as quick as possible to fulfill the mitzvah. Because over here, on the other hand, even though the Sicha, the name was the older daughter, there's the Chesaron and the name that she gave, but on the other hand, the fact that they went and had that relation with their father was, in their eyes, it was a mitzvah. They did it l'shem shemaim. They thought the whole world was wiped out. And they were just continuing that the world should continue to exist. And that was in their eyes a dvar mitzvah. So shebishvil, laila achas, shekodmesa, bechira l'tzeira, for that one night that the older daughter who had a relation with the father before the younger one, Kadmasa Arba Deiris Yisrael. So she merited that her descendant was Megayed into Klal Yisrael 4 generations before her daughter's descendant, right? So her descendant is from Moav, and the daughter is Amain. And the Gemara says why? Because by Moav, the daughter who was the daughter of, the son of Rus, which was from Moav, who was the one that was Megayed. So the son is Ovid, and then Yishai, and then David, and Shloimeh. And Ve'il, so that's by Moav. Ve'ilu Tzira ad Rechavam. But the younger one, Amain, when did her descendant become a Geiris? That's ad Rechavam. Only Shloimeh Melech married Nama that came from was an Amainis. So that was 4 generations later, the mother of Rechavam. The Chsiv, Shem Imay Nama Amainis. So this was all the schus that the older daughter did the mitzvah one night before.
So 4 and 4. So basically,
Huh?
so
4 generations earlier. Four,
Both
both were Megayer, but Rus was 4 generations before Nama HaMinus. Nama HaMinus was the wife of Shlomo Melech, and Rus was the mother of who was it again? Ovid, which is the father of Yishai, and the father of David HaMelech. Yeah. Okay, the Gemara goes back now to the halacha that we are speaking about in the Mishnah. Tanur Rabbanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Shosh Yisrael Shenagach Shosh Kuti Potter. So here it talks about the Kuti. So we learned already many times about the Kutim. The Kutim is this nation that came to Eretz Yisrael, and they were Megayer after lions attacked them. And there's always a machlokes in the Gemara whether they're Gerei Emes, are they real Gerim, or no, they're Goyim, because they're called Gerei Aroyes. They were only Megayer out of fear from the lions, and they're not real Gerim. So here this Brisa says that a shayr of Yisrael that gores a shayr of a kuti, you potter for this. V'shal kuti shenagach shayr shel Yisrael, but the shayr of a kuti that gores a shayr of a yid. So tam mishalem chatzi nezek, so he has a halacha like a yid. The tam pays chatzi nezek, and muad mishalem nezek shalim, and with the muad you pay full pay. So the pshat in this Tanna Kama basically is he holds that the kutim are gerei emes, but because they didn't keep mitzvahs properly, so the Chacham didn't want Yidden to mingle with and to mix with them. So therefore Chacham were geyser a knas that a Yid that gores, a shayr of a Yid that gores, a shayr of a kuti should be potted to pay. But otherwise, be'etzem, they're really real gedim. That's a Tanna Kama. Rav Meir seems to be saying that they are not gerei emes. Why? Because he says that just like goyim, shosh Yisrael shenagach shayr shel kuti potter, and v'shayr kuti shenagach shayr shel Yisrael bein tam bein muad. You always pay Mishalem Nezek Shalom, exactly like a guy. Says the Gemara, Lemeimres, so shall we say, the Savar Rav Meir, that Rav Meir holds, Kutim Gerei Arroya saying that Kutim are not real Gerim, they were only with Megaya because the lions attacked them and they were afraid. But the Gemara asks on this, Veramini, I'll ask you a shaila on this from, but it says in the halacha by Dam Nida. The dam of a nida, if you find a stain of blood from a dam nida, so then that dam nida itself is a av hatum, it's metame. So now what happens if you find a stain in an area you're not sure if it comes from a yid, from a guy? So here the Mishnah says these details. If these stains come from a city, rekem, tahirim. They're all tahir because that's a place that's mostly goyim. And the few yidden that are there, they don't throw out their stains of dam nida. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the stains you find in this city will be tamim b'nei geirim, because in the city of Rekem there was a lot of geirim and v'tayim. And they make a mistake and they throw out their stains, and therefore if you see it, you know it can come from these gedim, and therefore you're going to be tummy. Now, if you find these stains in the area where only goyim live there, ta'irim. So you'll be tired because you know it's a stain from a guy, it's not metama. If you find this the dam nida in an area where there are yidden and kutim living there, Rab Meir metame. Rab Meir says you'll be tamei. The Chacham mitarim, and the Chacham, are you going to say you're going to be tahar? Why? Shalei nechshudu, that is Yisrael al kismeim, because we don't suspect Yiddish women for taking their stains of dam nida and just throwing it out. They don't throw it out like that to be mitama someone else. So if you find a dam nida in an area where there's Yisrael and kutim, so you know it didn't come from a yid. It probably comes from a kuti. So therefore you're going to be tahir. Now, what do we see from this? Alme Kesava Rab Meir Kutim Gerei Emes. We see over here that Rab Meir says that the Kutim are Gerei Emes, and that's why. What is Rab Meir saying? Rab Meir is saying that if you find this stain in a place where there's Ben Yisrael and Kutim, you're going to be Tomei. So that must be, even though it could be coming from a Kuti, but nevertheless the Kutim are Gerei Emes, and that's why you become Tomei. Rabavo answers, you're right, the Takagere MS. So going back to what Rav Meir said before regarding the shayr, over there Rav Meir said that if a shayr of a yid gores a shayr of a kuti, you potter. If the shayr of a kuti gores a shayr of a yid, you're going to be chayiv always nezik shalim. So it seems like they're goyim. No, what pshat over there is knasu shekonas Rav Meir b'memaynam. It's only a knas. That according to Rav Meir, that there's a knas here, shali yitamu b'em, that you shouldn't mix with them. Similar to the Tanna Kama. Tanna Kama also said it was a knas, but Rav Meir is saying the knas is even more. The knas is that they're going to have to pay nezek shalim the first time. Says the Gemara, if this is taka true that we give a knas for the kutim, so how about in this case here? Most of Rab Zeira, so Rab Zeira asked, the Mishnah at the beginning of the third Perek Aksubis, ve'elu naris sheyesh lem knas, these are the girls that if someone is mizana with them, you have to pay a knas. And the Mishnah there says, even certain girls that are apostle and usher to marry into Klal Yisrael. And it says, Abal Mamzeres, one that has a relation with a mamzeres, vala nesina, which came also from the 7 nations. They were Nagayer in the time of Yeshua, and it's a Isser, according to Rashi, it's Isser Menatayda to marry them, but still there's a din of knas that you have to pay this. This is the knas that you pay if you mizana, the knas of Chamishim Kesef. Vala kutis, and it mentions also kutis, that there's a knas that you have to pay if you mizana with a kutis. So now, if you're going to say that, what does Rav Meir hold? Rav Meir holds that, the kutim are yidden, but there's a knas on their money, that if you damage them, you're going to be potter. If they damage you, they're always going to be chayiv nezek sholim. So over here, hachanami niknois, over here we should say the same kind of a knas, kadei shelo yitamaben, that Yidden shouldn't mix with them, that if you're mizaneh with a kutis, that she should lose money, that she should not be able to collect knas. If we see that Chachamim gave a knas, that they don't get any money from a Yid, so why don't we apply the same knas over here, that they shouldn't get any money from a Yid? Amar Abaye, so Abaye said that over here, Chachamim didn't want to make such a knas. Why? Kedei shelo yehei chayte niskar. So the one that sinned and did such a avera was mezaneh with this kutis, he shouldn't gain by the fact that he doesn't have to pay a knas. Chachamim didn't want to remove this knas. Direct the Gemara, v'neisve, that is, la niyim. Fine, so you don't want the person to gain, but you shouldn't give the knas to the kutis either. So let's charge him the knas, and we'll give the knas to poor people. Rav Mari says that's not an option. If you're going to give it to poor people, who are you going to give it to? There's no specific poor person that can come and demand it from this person that was mizana. Whoever's going to ask for it, you're going to say, no, I'm not giving it to you, I'm giving it to someone else. So therefore, we can't make such a knas that he's going to give it to poor people.